Alright everyone, so I guess we should talk about the Far Cry 5 review that Polygon just gave out. They gave Far Cry 5 a 6.5 out of 10. Now, why did they give such a low score for Far Cry 5? Most of the people who play Far Cry 5 think the gameplay is smooth, think the open world is beautiful, and that, the characters and the writing is overall pretty good. It's what you expect from the Far Cry series. It's a very well-polished game. But Polygon and other left-wing journalists, they don't see that. They see Far Cry 5 as a game that wasn't politically charged enough. It wasn't anti-Trump. It wasn't anti-white nationalist enough for their own liking. Saying that the game suffered because it wasn't edgy enough, it didn't take enough of a political stand against Trump. Having a few Trump Easter eggs wasn't enough. They should have just taken a full hardline stance against Trump and his policies and white nationalists, not making the cult in the game a white nationalist faction. And they're just, and that's pretty much the basis for why they gave the game a 6.5 out of 10. The other 3.5 points were taken away only because of that reason. And they've actually admitted that much. They've said, the gameplay is fun, everything is, everything runs fine, but we don't like the story because it's not edgy enough, it's not anti-right-wing enough. And, they said a whole bunch of things like, the game suffered because they tried too hard to make a game, to create a faction in the game that people on both sides of the political spectrum would have no problem killing. Right? And I'm just thinking to myself, are these guys really that dumb? You call yourselves video game journalists, but you don't even understand how the video game industry works? Do you not realize why AAA, blockbuster franchises like Far Cry, and like other big ones like Assassin's Creed, Call of Duty, Battlefield, I'm just naming the, ones out of my head, but you get the picture. Why do you think that the most successful franchises in the video game industry don't take political stands? It's because they know that if they do that, they will be alienating at least half of their potential customers. They're a business. I'm sure a lot of the people that worked on Far Cry 5 are probably anti-Trump, probably hate white nationalism, which, I don't have too many objections to, honestly. I don't consider myself a white nationalist. I don't think that white nationalism is overall a logical position to hold. People who are white nationalists, white supremacists, most of their ideology is based on their feels, less on actual logic, actual facts. It's all about their feelings and about, white people deserve to control this country and fuck minorities, and it's just, I just can't be bothered with it. So if they focused this cult on white nationalism, I personally wouldn't have had a big problem with it, but you need to understand from a business standpoint, if they made the game about defeating white nationalists, and first of all, there's a big difference between white nationalists and, like, the Ku Klux Klan. I mean, there's a big distinction between those two. While both are deeply rooted in racism, one is a lot more extreme than the other. So when you say white nationalist, you need to, be specific on what you're talking about. Because white nationalists aren't necessarily lynching people and, burning crosses and all that shit. They're not. But And it's also worth mentioning that not all cults are necessarily white nationalists or white supremacists. They want to focus their story on taking down an insane cult. They didn't necessarily want to focus on more political aspects. So, criticizing the game, saying the game isn't good, or that the story sucks because it didn't take enough of a political stand, it wasn't edgy enough, is just very unprofessional to me, honestly. Because if it was the other way around, game that is edgy, but not the kind of edgy that you like, you're pretty much taking your personal tastes, your personal feelings, and you're putting that into your review. And I understand, critics, video game reviews are all based off of, subjectivity. You can't have an objective review. Reviews are all based on personal tastes, right? That's why you don't have universal 9 out of 10s, 10 out of 10s for every game, but you do see, most games that are critically acclaimed to have similar reviews, but you do have some people who say, well, no, this game doesn't really deserve a 10 out of 10. It's kind of overrated. It deserves like an 8 out of 10 or a 7 out of 10. And that doesn't make their review any less valid than the 10 out of 10. That's because it's all based off of subjectivity. It's based off of your personal tastes. That's what reviews are all on. The problem is, when you put it on that level, that I don't like this game because it doesn't align with my political views, or that's not the right way to put it, because it doesn't align with any political beliefs at all, really. But the fact that it's not political enough, it's not anti-Trump enough for my tastes, is just a completely absurd thing to say, and it just proves that, reviewing video games on a professional level, like on a website that actually is supposed to have credibility, although we are talking about Polygon here, so, but you know what I'm saying. It's not the right job for you, I don't think. I really don't. It's just this whole conversation is completely absurd to me, because it's the entire reason why they weren't political in the first place. First of all, Far Cry isn't known for taking political stands. So, people who play the Far Cry series, who have supported the game for years, they played the first Far Cry game, maybe, and they played the second, third, fourth, they've been playing every Far Cry game ever since the whole series started. And then all of a sudden you have Far Cry 5 that makes sure that that the developers of the game do not like Trump, that they, that they're going to focus the entire game on, fighting white nationalists and, kind of just having the potential to alienate a certain group of their population, of their potential consumer base. And you're criticizing them for that. Like, don't get me wrong, I criticize developers for making certain financial decisions that might not necessarily be in the best interests of the consumer, but I just don't see this as that. Because, a point I was trying to make earlier, if it was the other way around, if it was a game that was maybe, that was against the political beliefs that you might have, I think one game that you might find too edgy would be like Postal 2. That offends everybody, not just right-wingers. A game like Postal 2, where, it was made out to be like the most politically incorrect game ever. And I think it accomplished that, honestly. Postal 2 is just in your face, balls to the wall, just politically incorrect. It's just one of those games. And I enjoyed it because of that. But the difference between games like Postal 2 and games like Far Cry 5 is that Far Cry already established itself as an open-world, first-person shooter game that doesn't necessarily take ideological positions. It's about taking down crazy people like he did in Far Cry 2, and Far Cry 3 with Voss, and Far Cry 4 with Pagan. And that's the case with Far Cry 5, with the Cole. And they felt that it was in their best interest to not focus the game on Trump too much, not to focus the game too much on white nationalism, because it would take too much of if they made it political. No matter whether you agree with it or not, that's not the question here. Okay? This isn't about whether or not Trump is a good president, or whether or not white nationalism is good or not. It's not about that. It's about the fact that Far Cry series is not known for taking a political stand, for having for putting political ideology directly into their game and the game experience. So for criticizing Far Cry 5 because it doesn't do that, it's like, have you ever played a Far Cry game before? The reviewer claims that they did, but I don't believe them. I just don't understand the criticism here. I really don't. I'm trying to. I mean, I understand it. Don't get me wrong. But I don't understand how anyone can see that as a valid criticism to make against the game. It's just beyond stupid to me, honestly. I mean, like I said, if the game took... you talk about how the game isn't edgy enough, but there are plenty of edgy games that I'm sure you would not like. It's not about the game not being edgy enough. It's the game not being edgy enough to your standards. That's really what it is. Because a game like Postal 2, where you pretty much, you go... like, one of the missions is going into a grocery store where the owner is Muslim, and then finding out that the entire thing is just a terrorist, it's just a secret terrorist hideout, the entire grocery store, and they have, like, goats all over the place, and it's just very offensive. That's the kind of edgy that I'm sure you wouldn't like. The No Russian mission is probably the kind of edgy you wouldn't like. So, saying that the game suffers because it's not edgy, no, just clarify. The game isn't good by your standards because it's not anti-right-wing enough. It's not anti-Trump enough. That's why you gave it a 6.5. Just be honest to your readers for a second. Just do that, please, because the problem with you giving a 6.5 out of 10 is that someone sees the 6.5 and they're like, oh my god, this game is shit, I just dodged a bullet. You don't realize the impact you're having on people, choosing whether or not to buy a game. Whether or not it's right or not, I think, if you just read a review, it shouldn't be your decision on whether or not to buy a game, but for a lot of people it is. So they go on Polygon and see 6.5 out of 10, holy shit. Because no matter what your opinion is on Polygon and how credible their journalism is, they're still a big name in the gaming industry. So, this is, for lack of a better word, problematic, although that word is, I think is overstayed its welcome at this point. Problematic. But that's what it is, honestly. Journalists trying to, I wouldn't say force, but try to coerce developers for making a clear political stand by giving them negative reviews because, it didn't meet your standards. It's just, I don't know, I think I said enough about this. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Do you guys agree with me that this is just total cancer and it's completely unprofessional, or do you think I'm just turning nothing into something? Let me know. I'm curious.